Hey, it's Mazzy, and I just want to do a little discography, a little overview of Wayne Shorter. Wayne Shorter passed on March 2nd, 2023, and he was a jazz giant, a saxophone player, just a very influential artist, a great composer, worked with some of the best small groups in jazz history, post-bop groups in jazz history. So this is not a definitive discography, but I just want to go through some of the records in my collection that he contributed to, in some cases led, and some cases just played solos on. So let's start with 1959. Of course, he came up in the era, he grew up in the era of bebop, but then really kind of came on his own in bop in 1959, joining one of the great, of course, jazz outfits in Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers. And I always used to, I always say, and again, I'm not an originator of this concept, Miles Davis, Art Blakey, and John Mayall in sort of the blues rock thing are some of the greatest band leaders and talent scouts. They allowed artists to come through in a way, an education, play with them for a number of years. They moved on. And, those three alone, there are probably others and similar, but those three alone brought in an amazing array of soloists and rhythm people who moved on to go on to lead other groups and work on other projects over the years. So in terms of, one of the great Art Blakey albums, Night in Tunisia, that great opening title track by Dizzy Gillespie, Wayne Shorter was a composer and actually started writing for the ensemble, and he arranged a lot of the music that Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers did. I think almost every album he had some of his own compositions. On Free for All, in fact, both two tracks on side one, the title track is a Wayne Shorter composition. These are fantastic albums. I suppose I should show a little bit of some imagery of Wayne Shorter there. Just a great sax player. Later he would kind of move on and like John Coltrane, who influenced him, move on to play some soprano sax as well. Of course, one of the great ones too is Indestructible. And on this one, he only writes one piece, Mr. Gin. The first, both songs on side one are compositions by Curtis Fuller. But again, a great member from 1959 until he joined Miles Davis's second great quintet. We'll get there in a minute. Witch Doctor, this is Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers again. Roots and Herbs, might even have a different cover, but it doesn't matter. Just great music. And this is Art Blakey, Lee Morgan, Wayne Shorter, Bobby Timmons yet again. After 5 years with the Jazz Messengers, in 1964, he joins Miles Davis and what becomes the second great quintet. He was someone who grew up with the bebop thing, but now we're totally into hard bop with Miles Davis. And of course, this is an amazing lineup with Tony Williams on drums. At 17 years old, he joins Miles Davis as a drummer. You got Herbie Hancock on piano, and you got Ron Carter on bass. And this would last for a series of wonderful records. ESP is a cool record. The title track is a Wayne Shorter composition. Just enjoy this one immensely. We have Miles Smiles. We have Miles in the Sky. I like this record a lot. This started getting into more fusion thing. And this was a direct result, just title-wise, obviously not music. Miles Davis took the Miles in the Sky from Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the Beatle track. But just one track per side. Again, this is produced by Teo Maceo, and it's the same lineup as the previous record. We got Files de Kilimanjaro. There was talk of Miles doing a line of coffee beans at one point, seriously, and this was going to be it. Chick Corea replaces Herbie Hancock, and Dave Holland replaces Ron Carter, only on a couple of tracks here. But this is a wonderful album, and I think just an album that doesn't seem to get a lot of love around to, or at least express overt expressions of love is Nefertiti. And this is a title track, again, a Wayne Shorter composition. So he really did a lot of, help with Miles, and obviously with Art Blakey did all the arrangements, but did some wonderful stuff. And what's great about, as I said, about Miles and Art Blakey, let these musicians thrive on their own and expand on their own. This is a wonderful record with that great second quintet. And then my favorite of the Miles Davis albums, In a Silent Way. This is obviously getting more infusion territory, and this is In a Silent Way, just a fantastic record. More elements are added. We get John McLaughlin on guitar, wild electric guitar, which really makes this band something completely different. Tony Williams is still there. Joe Zawinul comes in, and this is where Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter sort of, obviously the seeds were planted here for Weather Report the following year, but what a fantastic record. And then in 1970, I believe this is the last album that Wayne Shorter was on with Miles Davis at the time, without the entire quintet, without Tony, without Herbie. This is where it really fuses, and Teo Maceo really edits together these jams. An album that really shook things up. It was a progression from In a Silent Way. I prefer In a Silent Way. I think it's a little more focused. Not that this doesn't have to be focused, and that's the beauty of it, obviously. It just really gets more wild, and more rock elements are brought in. But Bitches Brew, an album that I did not get initially, or did not understand initially. I bought it, I returned it 3 years later. It finally spoke to me, and Wayne Shorter is on this album, Bitches Brew. I want to go through some of his solo records. Again, these came out parallel with him playing with Miles Davis. He signed to Blue Note himself as a leader. I think he did about 10 or 11 records with Blue Note. I only have a handful here, which I want to go through. But his debut was Night Dreamer with Lee Morgan, Reginald Workman, and Elvin Jones. Also McCoy Tyner on piano. Every song on here he wrote or arranged. I believe Oriental Folk Song was a traditional arranged by Wayne Shorter. This is a stunning debut record. This is an important record. He did a series of amazing sessions for Blue Note. One of his most famous is Speak No Evil. This is with his wife at the time on the cover. And again, this record, every track, starting with Witch Hunt, he composed. There you go, Wayne. Speak No Evil, incredible record. Of course, we got Adam's Apple. This is a Music Matters Jazz version with Herbie Hancock, Reginald Workman, and Joe Chambers. Again, a great album from 1966. We got another album from 1966, the All-Seeing Eye, Wayne Shorter. What a great, tight portrait shot there. And this is another album that he wrote, all but one of the compositions on here. I think the final one was an Alan Shorter, Mephistopheles. There you go. It's a mouthful. But the All-Seeing Eye, Genesis, Chaos, and Face of the Deep. You got Ron Carter again on bass, Herbie Hancock on piano, but Joe Chambers plays drums on this session. And then, wonderful, that was a Tone Poet reissue that is well worth searching out. He wrote all but one track on here. There's one Gil Evans cover of Barracudas, and this is Etc. This is a fantastic record. He did a whole change. He goes to Columbia, changes labels. I don't have a lot of his later period of records, but I'd say one record that really changed up, and I think it was a suggestion of his wife at the time, to work with the Brazilian artist Milton Nascimento. And Native Dancer was a great kind of fusion Latin record. And this is definitely a record of its time, a 70s record from 1975. But it's a wonderful record. Wayne Shorter, Milton Nascimento, Airto's on this. Herbie Hancock plays on this. And just a different direction for Wayne Shorter. And then this is 1975. And again, a lot of these records are crossing over. And I need to talk about another band that was crossing over right during the time that he made this album with Milton Nascimento. Obviously, while working with Miles Davis, he worked with Joe Zawinul there. And a really important fusion band was Weather Report. I have a selection of the records. I don't have their first album, unfortunately, but I bought this because of the cover. This is one of the early fusion albums I picked up only for the cover, because I Sing the Body Electric. I believe that was I was a big science fiction fan, and that's based on, I think, a Ray Bradbury science fiction story. And of course, this cover, I had no idea what this record was. And this is one of those sight unseen, pick up the record because of the cover. I believe this was 1972. And of course, Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter were the leaders of this band, and would be the only constant members of this band throughout their history. I got Miroslav Vicious, Eric Gravatt, Dom Ramayo on percussion, some guest artists like Hubert Laws and a few others on here. But the fusion electric thing was happening with Joe's keyboard playing, his synthesizer playing. And this was a huge, huge change in jazz music. Of course, we got a Weather Report, a Mysterious Traveler. Again, there's a fusion of African music, of rock, jazz, of electronic, and just some great compositions, both by Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter on a lot of these. Here's one. This is Weather Report, Tails Spinning. Of course, Jaco Pastorius joins, and it becomes a whole different outfit, and the bass feel of their music really kind of goes up a notch. Black Market was a popular record, but of course their big crossover record, big breakout record, and their biggest selling record, commercial success, was Heavy Weather. What a great fedora on that cover. That's not the only reason I like this record. Opens up with this great Joe Zawinul composition, Birdland, which later would... lyrics would be added, and Manhattan Transfer would do a lyric version. John Hendricks of Lambert, Hendricks and Ross added lyrics to this, like he did with Moanin', the Bobby Timmons song. It's on Art Blakey's album, and so many other records. And what a fantastic record this is. This is probably the most accessible, so if you're dipping your toes into Weather Report, this one would be a great one to get. And the other one I have is Mr. Gone, Weather Report. Great fusion band out of the 70s into the 1980s. And in this celebration of Wayne Shorter, I saw Wayne Shorter 3 times, once on his own with his own band, once with Weather Report. And I think the final time I saw him was late in 1977 in Berkeley at the Greek Theater for one of these shows. This is VSOP, the quintet. This sort of emulates the Miles Davis quintet, but instead of Miles, Freddie Hubbard is brought in. But this was a live set, again, with Ron Carter, Herbie Hancock, Freddie Hubbard, Wayne Shorter, and Tony Williams. So this gets the band back together, essentially, and it's really a wonderful, wonderful show. There's Wayne, second there. There's Wayne right there. Tony with his beard. But a fantastic VSOP, very special one-night performance. But of course, they did it over several sessions and several venues. Berkeley and the San Diego Civic. There we go. That's where it is. So VSOP, the quintet. And in closing, look, this is a celebration of one of the greatest artists ever. A celebration, a mini tribute. And I'm going to just show 2 more records. Both of these are from 1977, and these are 2 records that he guested on. Now, one is Joni Mitchell's Don Juan's Reckless Daughter. Obviously, in the 76, 77, Joni was fusing folk and jazz and rock, and working with Wayne Shorter, working with Jaco Pastorius, members of Weather Report at the time. Wayne Shorter's all over this record and would be on like a handful of her records after this. And Paprika Plain is on here, which is this long, I think it's one side of the entire record. And Wayne's playing on this. It's just lovely. And it just adds another level. If you only know Joni Mitchell's folk music and blue, which are amazing records, her foray into jazz, of course, she would later work on that Mingus project to the end. But what a fantastic record, and of course, his playing on this. And probably, if you don't know Wayne Shorter. You say you've never heard a Wayne Shorter record. My guess is you've heard his playing. And I'm going to close out with Steely Dan's Asia. The sax solo on the title track of Asia is Wayne Shorter, that extended, amazing track. Whether you like Steely Dan or not, whether you like the slickness of this band or this sound of this record from 1977, it's an amazing accomplishment, an amazing fusion. Wayne would do a lot of session work over the years. He would front his own band continually up until the last decade, I believe. But this is a cool kind of, again, that crossover. But he was doing crossover since Weather Report in 1970 and beyond. But what a great artist. And his path went in so many directions. Again, not just a great player, but a great composer. So this is my little showcase of what I have from Wayne Shorter in my personal collection. There's probably many others of records that he's on that I didn't pull. But thanks for watching. Put your comments below, some of your favorite compositions or records with Wayne Shorter on it. Mazzy loves you.